Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you're having a super fantastic, sparkling day. It has been an incredible day today. So, well, first of all, we had day 2 of Networking Riches, and if you joined us yesterday, where I had the amazing Deborah Thorne, the information diva, on, you would have heard a little bit about our first day at Networking Riches. Our day today was even better because one of the things I love about day 2 is we start day 2 with what were your takeaways from the day before, and I love hearing what resonated with people from the day before, because it's always something different that people resonate with, and some people pick up the same things but have from different perspectives, and we were talking about that yesterday. In fact, I remember talking about the movie yesterday, and for the life of me could not remember the name of it. So I then spent some time last night looking up the name of the movie to try and figure out what was that movie. It was not 8 Seconds. So the movie we were trying to figure out was called, I got to bring it up again because I want to make sure I get it correct, Vantage Point. And it came out in 2008. And Vantage Point is when we were talking about people seeing the same incident happening and and what registered with them, with their perspective. So when we were on Networking Riches day 2, and we're listening to what takeaways people got from the day before, it was very interesting to see how the information that was shared with everybody, how people turned around and says, yes, I picked up on that too, and how it affected them. So Vantage Point is the name of that movie that we were trying to think of yesterday. It's a really interesting movie, the way it was done, and it just shows, even though it is fictional, it just shows how people can see the same thing but interpret it differently. So I was thinking, because I don't have a guest on this evening, as you can see, it's just you and I, and hence the reason for the title for tonight. It's just you and I, and so I was sort of like thinking, well, what could we talk about tonight? And I thought, well, let's get down here. We've got this Vantage Point thing. You've got people see things from different perspectives, and we were talking about telling your story last night, and we've had some good guests on this week so far. I don't know about you, but I have enjoyed. We had Emmy on Monday. We're talking about getting clarity about ourselves, about our businesses, about where we wanted to go, what we wanted to see, what we wanted to do. We had Nicole on Tuesday, who we're talking about, health, because the best thing that you can do right now for yourself, if you want to live your best life now, is to make sure that you have good health, so you can go and do the traveling, you can go and do the experiences and the adventures that you want to see and do. And then last night we were talking about our legacy, our story, and it was an interesting thing, because I've had people give me feedback from last night's one, and again, different perspectives. And I thought, isn't that interesting how people, I know what Deborah and I were talking about. Deborah knows from her perspective what we were talking about, and people viewing got their perspective on what we were talking about. And it was kind of interesting, some of the messages that I got later on, some of the private messages I got later on about the perspective and their takeaways from it. And it was like with Networking Riches today. People heard the information, the same type of information, but in a different way. So, like one of the things that people, that Casey talks about Networking Riches is, who are the people that you talk to when you're at a networking event? And it was very interesting to hear when people gave feedback on that, their interpretation of it. So it's just sort of like, isn't it interesting how, based on where your mindset is at, to what you actually hear? Because there's times that Casey has told me for years to do something, and I've always pushed, and there's one that I've always pushed back on. Yet one of his friends and coaches comes along and does this workshop, so I go along to the workshop, and like that, he has me doing what Casey's been telling me to do for years. And I always remember the look on Casey's face, because a few days later we had Platinum in a Circle meeting, and this particular person happened to be there to give coaching to everybody, and I was talking about this event that I had been to, and I said, I said, it was a real struggle to do that, but I got it done, and this is my results, and this is da-da-da-da-da. And Casey's just standing there, and you can tell by the look on his face that he's sort of like, I have been telling you that for years. But it was the delivery. When Casey was talking to me about a certain topic and something that I needed to do, and I was pushing back, it's because I wasn't ready to hear it. I wasn't ready. Yeah, it was almost like Charlie Brown's teacher, wow, 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 in the background. Sorry, Casey, if you're watching this. It took somebody else to come along at the right moment in time for where my mindset was at and where I was at in my business to say, hey, you need to be doing this, and this is how we're going to do it. And you're at a hands-on workshop, so guess what? We're doing it. And I'm sort of like, okay. And the results I got from it. And it was sort of like all of a sudden, everything that Casey's been telling me over the years suddenly clicked, made sense. It just needed somebody to frame the exact same thing, just in a different way that my brain was able to process and go, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's do that. So as I always say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So when you hear back feedback, so when you're doing a multi-day event and you're getting people to give you feedback about the day before, it's always interesting to see how many people pick up on a certain section and their different interpretations of it based on where their mind is at. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And so yes, I've been getting some very interesting feedback about the conversation that Deborah and I had last night. And I love and adore that girl. She is just an incredible, incredible person. And I honestly cannot wait for her event coming up in November. And so then I was thinking, okay, what else can we talk about? And it's sort of like, and for some reason, just you and I kept playing over in my head. And I thought, okay, it's just you and I, because we've got no guests on. We do have one tomorrow night, but we don't have any guests on tonight. It's just you and I. And then I suddenly think, now, just you and I, what else could we apply that to? And it's when it comes to telling your story, who are you telling your story to? Think about that. Who are you, when you're writing your story, who are you telling your story to? Because that makes a difference in how you write it. And I think, and there was, and like, I do a lot of writing. Okay, I do a lot of writing, and I've had these book idea. I've had an entire book series in my brain for I don't know how long. Brad was still around. We were living in Solana Beach. His cancer come back. So it's probably around 2014, 2015. Actually, no, it wasn't. His cancer was back at that point. Around 2015, 2016, I was doing a 1,500-piece jigsaw puzzle at the kitchen table. Now, when I do jigsaw puzzles, my brain goes in all sorts of different directions. I have a brain that doesn't focus very well on one thing. It's all over. It's a very creative brain. Sometimes I'm scared of what's in my head, truly, because it's all over the place. It's like, I need to focus on this. Yes, you've got most of your focus is on this, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on that you're fully aware of. So when I'm doing a jigsaw puzzle, it engages a certain part of my brain, but my creative side of the brain was going, what if we did? And before I finished this 1,500-piece jigsaw puzzle, I had an entire book series idea. I had the main building that was going to be the centerpiece of the story completely designed. I knew who all the main characters were. I knew who all the sub-characters were. I knew a little bit about their storylines, but I also knew who the characters were, where they'd been to school, were they on a sports team, what sports did they play, how did they do academically, what career path did they choose when they left school, did they go on and get a college education, did they not, did they go into the military, did they not go into the military, did they leave school and become a waitress or a waiter or an actor or an actress. I have all of these details all written out, because I know that you got to get it out. Half the time I have to write stuff to get it out of my head, and at times the pen and paper feels like what's in Dumbledore with the pensive bowl, when he gets his wand and he touches it to his head and you see the silver stream coming out and he puts it into the bowl because he needs to make room in his head for more memories. That's kind of how a pen and paper is to me, for the only way I can think to describe it. If you haven't read Harry Potter, it's not going to make any sense to you, so sorry. But then I read a book one time on about writing, and the book was, and this applies to business as well. Who are you targeting your book to? Who is going to be reading your book? And I thought, well, in business, we sit there and we look at who is our ideal client, and you actually come up with a persona. Like, you want, if your dream client was to walk into your door, Jesus. If your dream client was to walk through the door of your business today, sorry, the brain's a little muddled. It's had a long day. If your dream client was to walk into your business today, how tall are they? Are they lean? Are they average? Are they overweight? Do they spend a lot of time in the gym? Do they not spend time in the gym? Start asking yourself this question: what do they look like? What are their physical features? How tall are they? How wide are they? Do they have an athletic build, a non-athletic build? Are they chunky? Are they slender? Do they have an athlete body? Do they have a runner's body? Do they have a bodybuilder's body? Do they have a fighter's body? What type of you want to physically describe this person. What color are their eyes? What color is their hair? How is their hair styled? What type of clothes do they like to wear? What sports are they interested in? Are they married? Are they not married? Do they have kids? Do they not have kids? How old are they? You want specifics. You want to get down to the details, because then what you do is that when you have that person, I'm like, good girl, Zeffie, good patrol. So we just got a package delivered to the door, and she's trying to tell me that there's a package at the door. So I'm just telling you, good delivery. Good girl, Zeph. Good girl, good patrol. She'll get a treat for that. She always does. We had a delivery one time, and she comes running out of the bedroom for the treat, and I was like, no. Anyway, but when you have that actual picture in your head, everything you do is targeted to that person and their interests, their business. Everything is targeted to that person. So basically you are creating a character. I wonder where I've heard that before. You're creating a character. You're creating a persona of this person that you want to market to. You want to have a single individual in mind. And the reason you want to have a single individual is you turn around and go, well, yeah, they're married. They're aged between 30 and 40. Well, there's a 10-year gap. Anything can happen in 10 years. Are they married? Not. Oh, yeah, they're married. Do they have kids? Yeah, they got kids. Well, how many kids do they have? Oh, 2 or 3. Well, you can't have 2 or 3. You either got to have one or the other. Sorry. What sort of car do they drive? Oh, they'll drive like something like a Toyota, I think, or maybe a Kia, or maybe even a Honda. So they like their foreign cars. Yeah. You can see how wishy-washy that is. But if you turn around and say, my ideal client is a male, age 54, who and you get very specific about how they look, what type of clothes they wear, what their income is, what type of business they have. Do they have a business, or are they in a job? And if they're in a job, do they work for a company? What position do they hold in that company? And they're married. They've got this many kids. This the ages of their kids. They've got 2 girls and a boy, or 1 boy and 2 girls. 2 girls and a boy, 1 boy and a girl. This is 2 boys and a girl. See what I mean with my brain? You never know where it goes. He likes to wear suits to work, or he likes to dress casual. And so when you have that image of that person, it makes it very easy to target your marketing towards that person. It's the same when you are writing this book. I wish I remember the name of it. This book was just very plain, very simple. It's like, who are you targeting your book to? And again, in this book, they're saying, create a character, and that is the person you're aiming this book to be for. And I'm like, huh. And if you turn around and go, well, I don't want it to be a young adult. Okay, you want to be a young adult book. How old is how old is that young adult that you're going to be sending this book to? Well, they're between the ages of, no. Specific age. How old are they? Are they 9 3/4? Are they 14 and a half? You've got to get specific, because at different ages during teenage years, and if you've been the parent of a teenager, you know this, at different ages, their brains are in different places. So if you go young adult in general, you got a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of stuff to unpack in that. But if you pick out a specific persona, so when you are writing your story, who are you writing your story to? Are you writing your story for your great grandson, who is going to be 15 when he reads this, or maybe he'll be a little older, like 17 when he reads it? Create that generational person in your head as to who you are telling your story to, and start telling the story. Because I'll tell you this, when you get that persona in mind and you get that person in mind, the language becomes a lot easier. Because then you're looking at, when you're reading back, you're going, oh, yeah, that's kind of an old person language. I need to make it to give it a younger feel to it, or I need to make it feel older, not like a child. I'm talking to a teenager, so I need to talk to them on a different level. So when you are looking at doing your life story, who are you writing to? Is it a grandson or a granddaughter? Just have that person in mind when you are writing it. It doesn't actually matter in the end who is actually going to read it. It's just you and the person you are writing that to. So you and I. So if I'm talking to you, who am I talking to? So get specific on who well, I'm just going to leave this story for my family. That's great. But which member of your family do you have in mind when you write this story? And this is going to get fun when you get to those stories. It's sort of like, man, they should write a movie about this. Or, you can't write a script for this stuff. And I know that there are those stories out there like that, which is why I absolutely love and adore Mark Twain's quote. And I'm going to have to read it so I get it right. When Mark Twain's quote, I love this quote because it is so true. It is no wonder that truth is stranger than fiction, because fiction has to make sense. When you are writing your stories and you're coming out and you're going, are they actually going to believe this? Write the truth. Don't fictionalize it. Write it. To the best of my recollection, this is what happened. And if there's a newspaper article that was about that event, include it. And there's great, but that was like decades ago. That's okay. There's resources out there like newspaperarchives.com or newspapers.com, or if in New Zealand, it's past. You can research the newspapers and find the articles online. For a lot of the major newspapers have digitized a lot of their stuff, and you can actually bring up the newspaper online and you can actually clip just the article that you want. I had one client one time whose aunt had been killed in a big incident, and so I knew this was going to be, but she couldn't remember when it was. And I knew that this incident was going to be big because when she was telling me the story, I thought, well, that's going to hit the major newspapers. So I went searching for it and found it, because she couldn't remember how old she was when her aunt passed away from this horrific accident. So I found the newspaper article. She had never seen the newspaper article before. And then, like, for a story on her, then there was another one where we found the newspaper article about an aunt and uncle's wedding. And she had never seen pictures of her uncles before. And there they were in the newspaper attached. And there was a picture of her uncle on his wedding day, on his wedding day and stuff. And there's the article underneath about the wedding. And I would tell you this, in the 40s and this was in the 50s or 60s. But there's a time period when you go through and they described the bride's dress. They described what the bridesmaids were wearing. They told you the names of the bridesmaids and how they were related to the bride or the groom. It could be the sister of the groom. And here is the groom, and this is what they were wearing, and here is his best man. These are his groomsmen. These people were their ushers. She was the daughter of this couple. He was the son of this couple. Attending the wedding and they will have like the entire guest list written there. And if they're relatives, and sometimes if they're relatives, it'll go, these were the grandparents of the bride. These are the grandparents of the groom. And then they'll have everybody else written there. And so I've managed to find her grandmother was listed there. And there was a picture of the bride and groom, so she got to see a picture of her uncle. She'd never seen a picture of her uncle before because she didn't even know who he was. Actually, her great uncle. So it was a very interesting. No, hang on. Yes, uncle. So she'd never seen a picture of her uncle before, and there he was on his wedding day. And so, if you can find newspaper articles that will back up your stories, use them if you can. If you've got somebody else's journal entry, well, here's the piece from this person's journal that describes their interaction with this, and, things like that. So, or here's their story from this. You can include other people's stories as long as you give them credit and say where it came from. So that is, and you can create again, you go into those different vantage points. If you've got people who will all talk about the same event and you get their different vantage points of it, it gives you a very rounded picture of what happened that day or what happened at that event. There's all sorts of things you can come across. And there's one person, I found an article written by her third great grandfather that was about how he grew up and about a particular historical figure that played a huge role in her third great grandfather's life, from when he was a boy through to when he was an adult and all of this. And so that was a very interesting article to read. And I'm like, this is a really cool article. It was actually, and then we found out who it was written by. It was actually written by her third great grandfather. What was his childhood like? How did he meet his bride? How did they move from the state to the state? What happened when they settled this particular county? You can find out all sorts of things in newspaper articles. And so that was a really cool find, because the person had no clue that this had happened, or no clue that this historical figure was actually part of her family. Because we found out that there is a way that they are, not only was their great grandmother the sister-in-law to this particular historical figure's daughter and niece, there was also a cousin relationship going as well. So it was very interesting to read this distant cousin, not close cousins, distant cousins. So it's very interesting what you find when you're telling people's stories. So when you're telling your story, who are you talking to? You're just having a conversation. Just think about it. It's just you and I. So remember, have that person's image in your head, or the person that you are writing your story to. You can even turn around and write them as letters. What's the name of that movie? There's a Hallmark movie called The Love Letter. Now, it's something that's done across time, so there's a little bit of a twist there with it. And this guy buys this antique desk and actually finds a hidden compartment, and there's these letters inside this hidden compartment that were written back in like 1863. And she just wrote them to Dearest. She had no name. The person wrote them to Dearest. She had no name of who this was. She just had an image in her head that Dearest was her soulmate that she had yet to meet. And she wrote her letter, and she wrote her letters to this person that she knew she was going to meet someday. She just didn't know when. And telling him, about her life and her hopes and her dreams for their life together. And I thought that is such a cool concept. So who are you writing your story to? Think of somebody, you can even put, dear grandchild, dear great grandchild, whatever. Just come up with a persona that you are writing your story to, because it will help you. It will help, because if you're thinking too broad, you're sort of like, well, should I put that story in? Should I not put that story in? Well, if I tell this story, then I have to, and you're sort of like, well, there's just going to be adults reading this story, so I can go into these details. But when you've got a specific person in mind at a specific age, it makes it easier to write. Trust me, it does, because my writing, when I need to write a piece, when I get the urge to write a certain piece, like if I was out walking one day and I saw this couple in the campground, and they had the picnic table there, and he was sitting astride the picnic table, and he had his arms around his wife, girlfriend, partner, whatever she was, and they were just having this private moment, and it was over in the distance, so I wasn't disturbing them walking past on the road or anything, but that piece inspired me to go and tell their story. Just from seeing them sitting there, wrapped up in each other, having their private moment, just hanging out together at a picnic table. It inspired me to go write a piece. And who did I have in mind for that? Well, it was done from his perspective and her perspective. So she's telling her story and he's telling his story. and it's their thoughts going through their heads. So I was writing it from their perspective to nobody in particular, but afterwards I thought, he's going through his thoughts, she's going through her thoughts. They're going to be sharing them with each other. So that was a piece of flash fiction, although my writers group was sort of like, well, is this part of a bigger story? I went, don't know. It could be a piece of flash fiction where it just stands alone, or it could be part of a bigger story. I'm not sure. I just wrote it. It just flowed. And sometimes that happens too. But sometimes you got to sit down and go, okay, I am writing this story to this particular person. So that is just you and I. When you sit down to write your story, it's just you and I. Who is the you and who is the I? I is being me. You is being you. So I being the person writing the story, and you are telling your story to you, to somebody coming along in the distance and coming along in the future. You could even be just writing letters to a grandchild who's just been born, to a newborn grandson, a newborn granddaughter, and telling her stories about your interaction with her, creating those memories with her or him. So maybe you could just be writing stories that one day that particular grandchild will get to read when they get older. It could be stories that you want them to, you want to write a book for them that they will get presented to on their 18th birthday, their 21st birthday, some milestone birthday down the road, or something that you want them to have be given on their wedding day. You hear of people who have terminal illnesses that write letters, future letters for children or people that they're leaving behind to be opened on a graduation day, a wedding day, a milestone birthday, that sort of thing. And, that's such a great legacy to leave. And you're pouring into there your hopes and dreams for that person. And sometimes that gives them a really good, it makes them feel good because they have a connection to that parent or grandparent that wrote those stories and things. So think about who are you writing your story to, and just have a conversation with you and I. Just sit down. That's it from me for today. Go out, have a super fantastic sparkling day. Have fun writing your story as well. If you want to write it as a children's book, write one particular story as a children. Well, that one just popped in my head. If you want to write one particular story as a children's book, because it could be something that happened in your childhood that you want to pass on to a grandchild, write it as a storybook. And if you have somebody in the family who's very artsy, have them do the artwork for it and create a picture. My favorite storybooks growing up was when I go to my grandparents' place, and they had the photo albums there, and I used to flip through and I started getting to know the stories that were in those photo albums behind the photographs. And that's one way you can get inspiration, is go open a photo album. Oh, you remember this particular time? And start talking. And if you don't have to sit and write it, you could record it and have somebody transcribe it for you. So you don't actually have to sit and write it. You can talk about it and get somebody to transcribe it. And that way they've got the voice recording. They may even have a video. Because you can turn around and say, oh, you can look at this picture, and here's your great Uncle John, and I can tell you stories about this guy here, and you might go into those stories. Or this particular day, we were down by the river, we're having a picnic there, we're doing our Sunday swim in the swimming hole in the river, and this particular thing happened. Or the reason that this one is so memorable is because of it was young Johnny's 21st birthday or something, Go pull out your photo album. If you want some inspiration for your story, go pull out your photo albums and tell stories about the photos. What was happening at that point in time when you took that photograph? What event was it at? Go pull out your photographs. Write stories about your photographs. It's seriously the easiest way to get started with telling your story is go grab your photographs. It doesn't matter how many photographs you have, but just tell a story about your photographs, and you'll be amazed at when you're going through, like I go through pictures on my phone when I'm uploading them into Forever, which is a data storage base where I can digitally store all my photographs, and they're in cloud space that I own. But I was uploading some of those the other day and going, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. And all of a sudden the story would start coming. So I keep this handy. I picked up my little recorder and I started recording the story about it. Or you could even get on do something like Loom, which is where you can do a screen share and you can do a voiceover with it at the same time, so you can display your photographs on the computer, share your computer screen, show the photographs, and tell the stories. Sometimes I do it as a Zoom call and share the desktop and do the recording that way. But there's all sorts of ways that you can share your screen and tell the stories. So if you want to wait, if you're not sure where to start, go pull up some photographs and tell the stories. It's as simple as that. Go grab a photo. I'm going to give you guys a task. It just popped into my head. Go pull up a photograph and tell the story behind the photograph, when it was taken, where. Always remember when, where, and who. When, where, and who. You definitely want to know those. When was the picture taken? So it helps date it. Where was it taken? So you got the location. And who was in the picture? And when you say the who was in the picture, how are they related to you? Were they a high school friend? Were they somebody that you've known since kindergarten? Somebody you've always grown up with? Is it a spouse? Is it a relative? How is that person connected? If you've got people in that photograph, how are they connected to you? And tell the story. That's all you need to do. Take one photograph and tell the story behind that photograph. And don't forget, who is in the photograph? How are they related to you? Where was it taken? When was it taken? And tell the story. I'm out of here. Have a super fantastic sparkling evening. Remember to tune in for show 1108 tomorrow, 1108 tomorrow, because we have a really cool guest coming on tomorrow, and I can't wait to bring you this particular guest. And if you want to find out who it is, stay tuned on the YouTube channel or on my Facebook page, because we will be posting the schedule with the bio and the headshot and everything. So you'll get to know who our guest is tomorrow. So have a super fantastic sparkling evening, and we'll see you guys back here tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. Pacific. Hei konara.